New York Giants training camp has been buzzing. It's been buzzing because there's been a lot going on, right? Wide receivers out there cooking, showing the speed and elusiveness that we hope to see. The defensive backs struggling a little bit. Can they get it together? Daniel Jones, always a big question. But what I've seen a lot of attention being paid to is the offensive line. That issue might have been taken care of when the Giants went out and signed former Raiders offensive guard Greg Van Roten, excuse me. Can he be the missing piece to bring all this thing together for the New York Giants? I'm Coach Gene Clemons, and I have a giant issue. 3, 2, 1. Ladies and gentlemen, welcome back to A Giant Issue. I am Coach Gene Clemons on the New York Giants on SI YouTube. Make sure that you download the podcast wherever you get your podcast from, Apple, Spotify, anywhere else. We really appreciate you joining us. Make sure that you subscribe to the YouTube channel. We're trying to get to 2,000 subscribers before the beginning of the football season. So let's get into it. Greg Van Roten. Who is he? Where does he come from? First off, there is no mistaking this. Van Roten is a journeyman offensive lineman. So this signing is not a signing that you look at and say, oh, they just added a guy that's going to be here for the next 3-4 years. His history shows 1-2 years at tops, and then he's on to the next position. Now, here's where it becomes a really good signing for the Giants. And I want to make sure that we give this the latitude it needs, because I want to discuss how it affects the entire offensive line and why New York Giants fans should be excited and a little apprehensive about the move. First, and I want to get the negative out the way first, right? It's the same thing that I said about Jermaine Illuminor. Why didn't the Raiders re-sign him? Right? The Raiders had the opportunity to re-sign Illuminor, and they had an opportunity to re-sign Van Roten. And when we look at how much each one of them made, right, for essentially, I don't know what, $7-8 million, they could have had both guys, their starting right tackle and their starting right guard, back in place for another season. I don't quite understand why they were out there to be had, right? I don't understand why Jermaine Illuminor, as a tackle that's starting in the NFL, didn't have more value to his team, right? Or didn't have the same value to his team. I'm not sure. You can't say that he came to the Giants because he wanted to win, because the Giants were coming off an absolutely abysmal season. The Raiders came off of a season full of hope where they got things turned around and going in the right direction. So that, I think that's the first thing, is why not re-sign? And then for Greg Van Roten or Rotten, in the comments, if you know the pronunciation, make sure you tell me. And of course, I'll find out, but let me know. I'm going to go with Van Roten. For Van Roten, what's interesting to me is, how has training camp started and he's not on a roster? Like, what happened, right? Now, I say that understanding that there are some really good, really talented people who have not found a home yet. I'm thinking about Justin Simmons, the safety for the Denver Broncos, or at least used to be for the Denver Broncos, who's still a free agent, if I'm not mistaken. By the way, would be a great signing for the Giants, bringing a veteran safety in to go with all of those young boys. But that would mean that one of them young boys is going to lose their job to a veteran safety like Simmons. I digress. But it still is, it's weird because offensive line is such a premium, right? According to the analytics guys and the people who do those things, safety's not a premium anymore. So I can almost understand why Justin Simmons is still out trying to figure out what home's best for him. But for a guy who started all 17 games at right guard for the Las Vegas Raiders, how is he still available? And why were the Giants able to get him so cheap? His guaranteed money is under $1 million. He has escalators. I believe if he plays 50% of the snaps, it can escalate to $3 million. $3 million for a potential starting guard, like for the season, that is cheap. You're not going to find that a lot of places. $3 million for a starting guard in the NFL is cheap, right? Not to mention, if it ends up being more like $900,000 to $1.2 million for a backup guard that operates and can operate at a starting level, that's really good value, right? So that's one thing. I just wonder about that. Like, what happened? Was there some disconnect? Did those guys say, hey, if Brasillo goes, I go? And when Brasillo left, they just said, yo, I'm not re-signing here because I have faith and belief in Brasillo. Like, if that's the situation, that's admirable. But I think that if the Las Vegas Raiders would have came to them with deals that they liked, they would still be Raiders. So it's always interesting to me when the person that you were dating said no thank you, right? Like, if you think about this in dating, beautiful woman, I meet a beautiful woman, and I find out, or through conversations or through my own research, she used to date a guy, and the guy, she was way out of the guy's league, right? And the guy broke it off, right? Or she just was a really good, she was like yo, this woman's great. She's a winner. She is wifey material. But the guy that she was with broke it off. I would raise an eyebrow, a rock eyebrow, a people's eyebrow. I would raise an eyebrow and go, why would this beautiful wifey material woman just be let go by the man? Or not even let go, because maybe that's the wrong word, but just not, that guy say, you know what, thanks, but no thanks. That would be strange to me. It wouldn't be a deal breaker, right? But it would make me wonder, what happened? Like, what happened? What really went on? So that's something that I thought about. That's something that I felt like is something that Giants fans should definitely take heed of and be ready for, because what if these dudes are washed? Now, I think Illuminor has come out the gate playing pretty decently, but we've only seen pads a couple days, right? It's not like we've been out here in pads, and then they can't have more than 2 padded practices in a row, so we're going to see shirts. But they played well together last year, so that's interesting. Now, on to the good stuff. We can say that this is just a great signing, right? This signing is a great depth signing. Let's operate underneath the guys that Evan Neal is back. And you guys know how I feel. You can't be giving up on an offensive lineman 2 years in when he's been hurt both years, and you have admitted that he hasn't been coached well, right? You can't give up on him. I don't care what he said about you, Giants fans. I don't care. We're talking about on the field now, right? You can hate him all you want. That's fine. I don't like him or dislike him one way or another. He's a football player, right? Can he play football? So let's operate underneath the guys that Evan Neal comes back, right? What is the value of Van Roten as a backup? Here's what I'm going to tell you. He's perfect, right? He's a perfect backup. Here's why. because the way the guards are situated right now, if Illuminor is playing left guard and Runyon's playing right guard, right? Follow me. Illuminor is playing left guard and Runyon's playing right guard. And the issue has been, well, you know, Runyon has played mostly left guard his entire life. Okay, well, guess what he doesn't need to learn how to do? Play left guard. If Illuminor was a good or a serviceable or a quality right tackle last year, guess what he doesn't really need to learn how to do? Play right tackle. His coach is right there. Correct? So those guys are playing guards. Neal is out at right tackle. Now you've got a guy in Van Roten, who can back up the guards, each guard position, because regardless of who comes in, he's still or who goes out, he's still going to right guard. I'll explain. If Illuminor gets injured, he plugs right in at right guard. If Illuminor is healthy and Runyon gets injured, he plugs in at left guard. If Neal gets injured or underperforms and they move Illuminor out to tackle, then they plug him in at right guard. So whatever happens, he essentially goes to right guard. The only way he would possibly go to right guard is if Runyon gets hurt, right? My apologies. If he goes in for Illuminor because Illuminor gets hurt because Illuminor is a left guard, they just move Runyon back to left guard and he's the right guard. If Runyon gets hurt, he's at right guard. If Neal gets hurt, they move Illuminor to tackle, Runyon to the left guard, and put him in at right guard. Sorry, I messed that up the first time. But you get what I'm saying. He is the right guard, and because Runyon Jr. is flexible enough to play left or right, because he's done it, he's the one that moves, and we're good. Now, here's the fun part. Van Roten also has experience as a center. Right? When he was not 2023, but in 2022, when he was with the Bills, he was a center. And he operated as a center. He made starts at center. That tells me, right, he is flexible enough to be able to spell all three interior linemen. So now, right, on a game day where you're only really carrying, 7, 8 offensive linemen at the most, you've got one guy to fill 3 spots. That's your ultimate sub. That is a perfect sub. That's what you want. That's very similar to what Nick Gates was able to give you when he was healthy. He could be the backup center, guard on each side, right? So that is a win. That is a win for the Giants when it comes to depth. He then allows everybody else to step their game up that are backups. You know why? Because that's one less spot you have. Because he essentially provides the versatility of all 3 interior spots. These other guys who are fighting it out for these interior spots, your Marcus McKeithans, right? Schlotman, you got to elevate your game. You got to play harder. You got to show your worth more. Because if you don't, hey, we got a guy. We can just release that dude, put him on a practice squad. And nobody wants to be on a practice squad as opposed to being on the active roster. Number one, the money ain't the same. Number two, practice squad is really close to being cut. Right? The only thing that is standing in your way from being cut is an injury. If the wrong person gets injured, you get cut because they need to be able to put somebody on a practice squad to take that person who got injured spot if they don't have it. Remember, the practice squad doesn't have every single position on it. The practice squad ends up having people that are at position, or that what they feel are positions of need. So as a backup, as the guy coming in for the guy, Van Roten is a fantastic addition, and he doesn't cost that much, right? That's something that doesn't get talked about enough, but when you get a value, you take advantage of the value. And the Giants have done a really good job of getting 3 offensive linemen this offseason in free agency that are worth more than what they're valued at. I think they got Runyon for a discount. I think they got Illuminor for a discount. And I know they got Van Roten for a discount. So between all 3 of them, that's great value. Now, here's the third scenario. Here's the third part. And the third part, to me, gets tricky, right? Because the third part has 2 parts to it. The first one is they brought Van Roten in to be the starting guard, because that means that Evan Neal's not ready to play, like, and is not going to be ready to play. Like when they said, hey, we can't guarantee that he's going to be ready for the start of the season. We can't guarantee that. Maybe they're telling the truth. Maybe that's them saying, oh, he's not going to be ready for the start of the season. So if Evan Neal isn't ready and ends up on the injured reserve, right? He's gone, I believe, for the first like 6 weeks, 7 weeks. He's gone for a good chunk of games if he ends up on the IR, right? So now if you're gone for a good chunk of games and your backup right tackle is Jermaine Illuminor, who's coming in at your guard? Now that's tank. Hey, we see the writing on the wall. Illuminor is going to be our right tackle. We're bringing in Van Roten to play guard, right? So again, I told you this is 2 things and they have layers to it. Are you putting Van Roten immediately at right guard? I think that's the move, because you put Van Roten and Illuminor next to each other. Their offensive line coach is there coaching them. They understand how to work with each other. It's a natural combination, and you move Runyon Jr. back to the left side where he's probably more comfortable, more familiar, because that's what he's done more with the Packers. Right? And now that move solidifies you, and now you can go and find the synergy of these 5 guys throughout training camp. That's great. That's fantastic, right? Also, because you've done this, now there's no pressure on, there's no internal pressure on Evan Neal to come back too early. The external pressure is already calling him a bust. Like the fan base has already said that he's a bust, even though a lot of people don't really know what they're looking at when they're looking at offensive line play. After 2 years where he has not made it through a season, people are already calling him a bust. Hey, not for nothing. When Justin Pugh didn't work out in the Giants, did he just never play anymore, or did he go somewhere else and end up being a starter and a very effective starter? The answer is the second one, right? And then I can start going down the list of names of guys that the Giants could not get right, that walked into another situation and was instantly better, right? Will Hernandez had a great rookie year at left guard, I believe. Then had a bad sophomore year and was gone. And then went somewhere else and started again. Why? Because he's not that bad. It's pretty good. Kevin Zeitler came in, I thought did a good job. Wasn't good enough for the Giants. So they moved on. He went right over to the Raiders starting. The Ravens. Right over to the Ravens as a starter. The Ravens, one of the best offensive lines in the game because they know how to find the talent. It's not because they are investing a bunch of first round. They've lost guys and they bring them back, right? So keep that in mind when you're calling Evan Neal a bust. But internally, this gives Evan Neal time to rest, time to really fully heal, recoup, recover, and work on his game, right? Because he's been injured, a lot of people have said it. I know Ray Harris has talked about it on X, and shout out to Ray. Because he's been injured, how much has he been able to work on cleaning up the issues that he has with his footwork, with his body placement, with his balance, right? How much has he had time to work on that? Well, if he has to sit out 6-7 games, he's got time. So he gets healthy, then he gets some tutelage, right? And then when he comes off IR, he's ready to plug right back in at right tackle, move Illuminor back to guard, or figure all that out, right? Van Roten is your backup. He knows it. But now this benefits Van Roten because he's got more film showing that he can be a starting guard. That is the first part of scenario. The second part of the scenario is they've washed their hands of Evan Neal. And I'm here to tell you that if they've washed their hands of Evan Neal, this might be the worst decision they've ever made. This might be far worse than letting Saquon Barkley go. Far worse than Xavier not re-signing Xavier McKinney or Julian Love. Far worse, in my opinion, than trading away Leonard Williams. Far worse than the Daniel Jones contract. And why? Because he's 23 years old. Jermaine Illuminor was not good through the first few years of his career. Not first two, first few, first many. Jermaine Illuminor just became a quality offensive lineman. I don't even know if he's good, right? I don't know if he's good. I just know that he is a quality lineman. Van Roten was a journeyman. It took him many years before he was able to show that he could be a legitimate starter. And even then, every year to 2 years, he's been on different teams. You know, this is team number 6 for Van Roten. Number 7, excuse me. Team number 7 for Van Roten. He's in year 10. He's in year 10. Why in the world would you give up on a talent that's 23 years old that you have under control through the contract for the next 3 years? Now, I'm not even here to tell you that it would be a bad thing if you said, hey, Van Roten, Illuminor, 2020, 2024, 25. Right? This season, we're going to go with Van Roten and Illuminor unless one gets injured and Neal comes in as your tackle. But in 2025, the plan is to turn that position back over to Evan Neal. Either turn him back over as a tackle or turn him back over as a guard. But whatever you're doing, he needs to be a part of your future plans. You've heard it here from me a bunch of times, but I'm going to say it again, and I'm standing on business. Evan Neal will be a quality offensive lineman in the NFL. I don't know if it's going to be at tackle, but I 100% guarantee you, if the Giants let him go, somebody's going to pick him up. And if he is actually locked in and wants to be a great lineman, they're going to move him to guard, and he's going to be just fine. And it won't take 8 years or 7 years or 6 years or 5 years. It'll be immediate. I still believe he could be a decent tackle. Do I think he can be an all-world tackle? I don't believe so. But I think he can be a starting right tackle. Yes, I do. But he's 23, so I could be wrong. He could end up being a phenomenal tackle. Why? Because him at 23 will probably look nothing like him at 25. Him at 26. Linemen are playing well into their 30s. There's no way you give up on a 23-year-old going into his third year when the first 2 years he's dealt with injuries and what people have said is lack of coaching. How do you give up on that guy? What kind of sense does it make to give up on that guy? So if that is the scenario where you're saying, hey, you know what? We made a mistake. We wash our hands of Evan Neal at 23 years old, only 2 years into the rookie deal. Then I'm saying that is the worst decision you could have possibly made. I'm not saying they're making that decision. I'm not saying we're actually going to know because Hard Knocks is over, right? We don't get to hear. This would have been the time to have had Hard Knocks, right? Training camp with the New York Giants, because we would have heard the behind-the-scenes talk about Evan Neal. We would have heard what went into the decision to sign Van Roten. We would hear the talks about whether or not they think Evan Neal is going to be ready for the season or whether he'll be back in a week. Like, what happens if Evan Neal comes back in a week? I know what a lot of fans are going to want. Oh, it's an open competition. Illuminor and Neal at right tackle is an open competition. What do you think you're going to see? You think that you're going to see Illuminor outplay Evan Neal at right tackle? What's going to be the measurement? Who's going to measure it? Every time I look at clips, when people take clips, every time I look at the clips, they're focusing in on one little part, not the whole scene. I really wish some of these people would take video where they show the entire field. Like, give us an all 22 look if you're going to take video, because when you just are looking at the quarterback, I can't tell if he's holding the ball too long or if the wide receivers are not getting open. All I see is you film the quarterback in the box, then he throws the ball, and then you scan over and see a wide receiver covered. I don't know if he was covered the entire time or if they were allowed to the defensive back was allowed to make up ground because he held the ball too long. Maybe expand the picture out, show us everything, and now we can decipher, right? You can make a better, more educated analysis of the play. But most of you are not going to be able to do that at offensive line, because the only quantifier you're going to have is if somebody gives up sacks. And many of you think Evan Neal is bad because guys are able to speed rush him. But if you look at the sacks surrendered against the elites, it's not that bad. Pressures are pressures. That's going to happen, right? We don't say, hey, the quarterback went 13 for 20. We don't harp on the fact that, we harp on the drops. Oh, he had 2 drops. So it really should have been 15 for 20. Instead, he's 13 for 20. Should have been 15 for 20, but he has 2 drops. We don't even focus on the other 5 passes that he missed. Why did he miss those 5 passes? Underthrown, throwaways. Who were those on? So we don't analyze the game always the right way. So who's going to make that decision? No, if Evan Neal is ready in a week, put him back at right tackle. And in joint practices and beyond, when you see live bullets, those coaches will know. They'll know. And not for nothing, this regime knows they need to start winning, right? Brian Daboll went from coach of the year in 2022 to a presumed bottom 5 coach, which is stupid. It's idiotic. But that's what we deal with. So they're not going to just put Neal out there simply because they drafted him. They're going to put Neal out there if they think he gives them the best opportunity to win. What I'm saying is, make sure that you're not washing your hands of Evan Neal. If the plan is to get him better and then eventually get him back out there, I'm good with it. If the plan is to move on from him, it's a horrible plan. But what's great is Van Roten is in the building, right? Roten Tomatoes. I was trying to come up with funny like quips or whatever to say with Roten, or Rotten, but whatever. I think that training camp will get interesting. I want to see today where he is. If he gets out there immediately, if they're putting him in with the 2s, and when he goes in, does he go to right guard or does he go to left guard? All of that will matter to me. That is the issue that I'm really on right now. Ladies and gentlemen, thank you for joining me. Make sure you are enjoying training camp. Enjoy it. Have fun. Football is back. We are one day closer to real football. That is something to be excited about. Make sure that you follow and subscribe to the New York Giants on SI YouTube channel. Make sure you hit up my YouTube channel at Coach Gene Clemons. Give me a subscription over there. Lots of Giants content will be coming over there once the season starts. Make sure that you follow everything that we're doing over on New York Giants on SI. I have a new GGU that is dropping today. Guess who it is? You guessed it, Van Roten. You're going to want to read that. You're going to want to check it out. Until next time, I'm Coach Gene Clemons, and I have a giant issue.